Hello and welcome to another history episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I am so excited for this month's show.
Oh man, this is our monthly history episode in which we look back at one particular games all throughout 2025. That games will be Sydney 2000 as it's the 25th anniversary of those games. When we divvied up everything, you took artistic gymnastics and we didn't know that we knew that there were issues. We did not know how many debacles there were.
Oh,
Honestly,
I I knew.
the number of novellas we would have had.
Let me put it this way. I could not even include all the epilogues in this story.
Oh,
I'm going to try and throw some in as we're going along, but it it gets wild. Let me just put it that way. I do remember most of this, so this is why I wanted to dig into it a little bit more. It's wild, and get ready, and
all right.
definitely put some padding down. People get hurt. So we'll start off with the good parts. Trampoline made its debut in Sydney. Russia took gold in both the men's and women's events. G. Wallace of host Australia took silver in the men's competition. And a name that you may know, Karen Cockburn of Canada, took the first of her 3 medals. The artistic competition on the men's side, thankfully, was much quieter than on the women's side. Basically, all you need to know is Alexei Nemov. As yes, I know, when you're a gymnastics fan, certain names just bring up pictures, and this is one of them. He competed in Atlanta, he won 6 medals, and then after Atlanta, people started calling him lazy and distracted. He got married, his wife was pregnant at the time, and everyone said, has he lost his edge? Well, guess what? Nemov said, I have not lost my edge, comes back, wins another 6 medals, including the men's all around gold. He had won silver in Atlanta. He won gold on high bar, bronze on parallel bars and pommel horse, and in the team competition, Russia took bronze. He had not met his newborn son, who had been born about a month previous. That's how dedicated he was. And he returned to Russia and gave him what he called a golden rattle. That's the last happy thing I'm probably going to be saying the rest of the show.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah, because now let's move to the women's artistic competition. Things get a little wild. So, leading into this, it looked like the team event would be a battle between Romania and Russia, who had finished 1-2 at the previous 2 world championships. Romania had never defeated Russia in the team event. The Chinese and Americans were expected to be competing for a place on the podium. 2 of the Magnificent Seven from Atlanta 1996, Dominique Dawes and Amy Chow, had returned for Sydney, but the Americans had really struggled after 96. The program had kind of hit that pinnacle and then was trying to reform itself. And on the first night in qualification in Sydney, only national champion Elise Ray had qualified for an event final.
Wow. Wow.
3 American gymnasts had qualified for the all-around, but not the event finals. So that was a little strange going into it.
And feels very shocking after 1996 because I do remember 2000 felt like a big disappointment.
Yes. Yes, it gets worse. Bela Karolyi is still in the picture at this point, and he was not happy. So we got lots of shots of him being not happy. Thankfully, NBC learned its lesson a little bit because I did watch the NBC coverage, and we don't get to see too many shots of Bela Karolyi, which was a relief.
Who were the NBC commentators for this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's Al Trautwig and
Was
Tim
Daggett there?
Daggett and Elfie Schlegel.
Oh, Elfie came back because I know John Tesh was just a lightning rod of really bad lines in 1996. Al Trautwig actually recently passed away.
Yes. And you do hear the improvement. But Elfie Schlegel is still Elfie Schlegel, so it's moderated. So after the qualifying night, Russia leads by a full point over Romania. led by Svetlana Horkina. And if you're an Olympics fan and a gymnastics fan, you remember this girl. She's terrifying. She was 5'5", so she was very tall, big presence on the floor. Her attitude and her diva-ness was even bigger. Every time she looks at the camera, I'm scared, even though it's 25 years later. I mean, this was one tough cookie. And surprisingly, the Americans were in 6th behind Ukraine and Spain.
That is not something you see.
And certainly not something you would have seen then. It's not like those teams were big then and have fallen off. Like Spain, what is happening? I mean, Ukraine at the time still had a lot of that Soviet backlog, so to speak. They still had a lot of gymnasts who had been trained under the Soviet system, certainly the coaches. So that wasn't as big a surprise. They were very successful on the men's side at this Olympics. But still, for the Americans to be sitting in 6th, it was like, oh, is it 1976 or 1996? What is going on here? So the finals of the team event are really weird. They did a staggered start. So they started with Spain and Ukraine, then Romania and the US start, and then finally Russia and China. So at first, you have only 2 teams competing at a time, and then 4, and then 6.
Wow.
If
So
you're
they
confused,
didn't
it was very confusing to watch as well.
did they then all do the same rotation of apparatuses, or did they then start like one starts on vault and then they introduce the beam and then they introduce
I
the others?
could not tell from looking at the television coverage because it jumps around so
Oh,
much who
right.
was where. And again, because I was looking at the final score sheet, I couldn't tell. I do think they did the same rotation so everybody can end on floor because floor is big and sexy. Everybody loves the floor. So Spain and Ukraine go first. And on paper, they have the lowest starting scores. And they both made little steps, little mistakes. So it wasn't a big surprise that by the time they finished, they were looking pretty low. The US starts big on vault, solid on bars, but both Amy Chow and Elise Ray had some trouble on the beam. But again, no disasters. They finished on floor exercise with solid routines and pulled ahead of Spain and Ukraine, but they were behind Romania, as expected. Russia begins to struggle very quickly. On the bars, Horkina falls off. She's the world champion on bars.
That does not happen.
That does not happen.
Because also, I mean, like, you see some falls off of bars today, but that's in part because of the tricks that they're doing are so complicated. But back then, everybody was pretty solid.
I mean, you would see falls on the release moves as always, but it was not the way it is today where the girls are doing 3, 4 releases. They're doing 2,
Mhm.
and then a couple high-low transitions. It gets worse. Yelena Zamoldakova fell off the beam on a basic handspring. Yekaterina Lobazniuk fell off on a jump, like not these long passes, these really simple moves. And it came down to the final scores and the final rotations. So the high starting scores for Russia kept them ahead of China. China was just solid, solid, solid throughout. And China was ahead of the US by 0.2 of a point. Romania was so good in the team competition, and they finished ahead of Russia. This was the first gold for the Romanian women in a full participation Olympics. They had won the gold in the team event in LA 1988, but the Soviet Union and some other powerful Eastern Bloc teams had boycotted. But that's not the end of the story. You think we have a podium? Romania, Russia, China?
No?
We don't. In 1997, the International Federation for Gymnastics, the FIG, had raised the minimum age of athletes from 15 to 16. And the Chinese team had been plagued for years with accusations of fielding gymnasts well below the minimum age. This would come to a head after Beijing 2008, when it was discovered that 3 of the Chinese women were below the minimum age. And as part of that investigation, investigators uncovered evidence that Dongfeng Zhao was only 14 at the time of the Sydney Olympics. Because of that, the Chinese were stripped of their bronze medals and the American women moved up to third. They finally received those medals in 2010. It was the only medal for gymnastics for the Americans, either men or women, in Sydney. That's how much of a fall off it had been after
Wow.
Atlanta.
Wow.
You think we're done? We're just getting started. So now we get to the all around competition for the women. And this is where things really go off the rails. The favorite was Russian Svetlana Horkina. She had come into the team competition with a gold or nothing attitude. So she was crushed by that silver the night before. And as I mentioned before, don't mess with Svetlana. Watch some of this footage. You will be terrified of her. I promise you. And she wanted nothing but gold in the all around. Now, standing in her way is, of course, all these Romanians. Elise Ray is the American national champion. We've got a lot of powerhouse women coming into this competition. She starts off, Svetlana, with a gorgeous routine on floor exercise, but her next rotation on the vault is an absolute disaster. She launched herself into the air, barely completed the twist of her vault, and she lands on her knees. This is not the kind of thing you saw at the time. Now you see women doing much harder vaults. Landing on your knees, you didn't see in the Olympics.
No.
She immediately bursts into tears because she knows her dream of the gold is over. Because as the announcers actually said accurately, at the time, you needed 4 clean programs. You couldn't have a fall with the way the scoring system worked and likely recover to win a medal. It's different now because we're still in the 10 scoring system. So if you've fallen, you're not going to be on the podium. Except the vault seemed to be killing the dreams of a lot of gymnasts that night. Elise Ray fell on her back. Britain's Annika Reed fell so hard that she had to pull out of the competition. Vault after vault, gymnasts crashed, fell on their heads, ran into the horse. As the third rotation warmed up on the vault, and we've had all these crashes, and the announcers are confused, the crowd is confused, nobody understands what's going on. And here comes 16-year-old Alana Slater from Australia, who's warming up and says to her coach, the horse looks wrong. She does a warm up. She signals her coach and says, the horse is too low. Coach looks at it and says, I think you're right. And they signal the officials. Turns out the horse had been set at 120 centimeters instead of 125 centimeters. That's almost 2 inches. But it's also the equivalent of 1 notch on the legs of the horse. Now, you have to go back and watch the videos because the horse itself looks very different now. Now you have that single tube in the middle and that arch table. In the old days, it had 2 legs and a center piece that was across the middle. And you'd set each leg and it would sort of click into place. They clicked it into the wrong place. You don't think 5 centimeters a lot, but
The world.
you ain't kidding. The vaults are timed so precisely that 2 inches was literally the difference between completing a world-class vault and landing on your head. 18 gymnasts had already competed on the vault at the wrong height. No one had done very well. Officials gave gymnasts the option to redo the vaults. That was their solution. Problem was, because gymnasts like Svetlana Horkina had already had these disasters on the vault, it affected their entire rest of their competition. Horkina again fell off the bars after she had fallen on the vault. She had given up. Other gymnasts had chosen not to do certain difficult moves because they already felt they were out of the competition. So just redoing the vault would not have made a big move in their scores. So even if you got a new vault score, you can't redo the entire competition.
Oh my gosh. How horrible is that?
It was tough, and it was tough to watch. I remember watching this at the time going, yeah, giving them another vault is great, But unless you restart the competition entirely, it's never going to be totally fair.
Right. And you can't necessarily move it to another day because everything is so tightly scheduled. And even if you restarted the competition, A, people have gotten injured off of this fault. And B, their bodies are tired from competing already. So there's no great, fair way to fix this. Would not want to be an official in the room there.
Right. So then, of course, afterwards, there's a huge investigation. How did this happen? And at the time, the investigation really didn't find an answer as to how this could have happened. But an article from Gymnastics History published in 2022 revealed their investigation, and they found an error in the 2000 edition of the apparatus norms. The apparatus norms is the Bible issued by the FIG every season for how these pieces of equipment are supposed to be set up. The guidelines in that book said 120 centimeters for senior women instead of 125 centimeters. There had been a change made in that quad as to how high the horse was supposed to be set for senior women. And that change of height is why we saw a very rapid increase in the difficulty for women's vaults. They tried to call back these books, they tried to issue corrections, but there were still some wrong books floating around, and one had been at the Sydney Olympics.
Whoa.
There was a change in the equipment. There have been additional fail safes. We've never seen anything like this before or after.
Right, because this is what led to the introduction of the vault that we know today. Because didn't that one get, it took like till 2004
It
to
did,
get that
because
vault.
it changes the whole way you vault because it's an angled table instead of a straight table. And it changed vaulting for all of gymnastics. So this 5 centimeters changed the entire sport.
Wow.
So after all that, Romania swept the podium for the first time in Olympic history because at the time, a country could have 3 athletes in the all around. Now, and because of this Romanian sweep, the US lobbied heavily to change it to 2, which turned around and bit them in the butt this year and bit Jordan Childs in the butt because she finished 4th, but because 2 other Americans were ahead of her, she did not get to compete in the all around.
Wow.
And all 3 of the Romanians had competed on the vault after the error was discovered. 16-year-old Andrea Radican won gold, Simona Amenar won silver, and Maria Olaru took bronze. Guess what I'm about to say?
But wait, there's more?
But wait, there's more. While in Sydney, Andrea had been battling a cold, which, if you've ever lived in group environments like college dorms, a cold will run around like rapid fire. And her coach had given her 2 Nurofen tablets to clear her head. Unbeknownst to Andrea, the medicine contained the bad substance called pseudoephedrine. Now, that's old school Sudafed. We've all taken it. It's legal, it's over the counter, but it is a stimulant. So it is considered to this day a bad substance. So in her post competition drug test, Radican tested positive and she was stripped of her medal. The Romanian Olympic Committee appealed the decision to the Court of Arbitration of Sport. Despite the efforts of ROC President Jan Tiriac. Do you remember him? He used to coach Boris Becker. He was a tennis pro.
Oh my gosh.
And he looks like Vlad the Impaler. Not even he could convince the IOC otherwise. And a lot of the IOC members wanted to give Radican a pass.
Oh,
and
yeah, I
say,
can imagine.
clearly she didn't do this on purpose. Clearly this was a mistake by her coaches. But Cass said, you got to follow the rules. And Radican's loss of her medal stood.
Which is so sad, but you do wonder, okay, if she has a stimulant in her blood, did it affect her performance that day?
She says no, and in fact, the medicine made her dizzy.
Interesting.
Which I can believe because if you're not used to taking that and your body is so precise, pseudoephedrine can make your heart race. People have had that reaction, if you ever take Sudafed. And if you have high blood pressure, you can't take Sudafed or pseudoephedrine. So, and I hate to say it, but there is more. I told you, it is wild how much happens here. As I said, when you live in communal living, germs spread. Guess who else had a cold? Silver medalist Simona Aminar. She took the medicine too, but
Oh.
because she weighed 15 pounds more, her body absorbed it. It didn't show up in the test. So she comes out to the press conference, admits, I also took this medicine, but because the drug test didn't show it, it didn't matter.
Whoa.
Aminar was upgraded to gold, Aloru was upgraded to silver, and China's Zhuan Liu was awarded bronze.
Wow, that is just incredible.
I do have a little epilogue
There's
that I do want to mention. Radican later became the head of Romanian Gymnastics.
right.
And unfortunately, she was the head during the most disastrous time in a Romanian gymnastics when they did not make the Olympics as a team.
Oh.
So it didn't get better for her.
Oh.
And Simona Aminar is named, the Aminar is still one of the most competed vaults that you will hear. So you will hear her name continuously. You heard it in Paris and you'll hear it again in LA. Are you tired? Do you need a pseudoephedrine?
I don't know. I'm afraid to take one now. I might get
So,
banned from doing this podcast.
I do highly recommend watching some of the footage of the all around. The NBC coverage is still up on YouTube. I watched the whole thing. And God bless Tim Daggett and Elfie Schlegel. They tried to be professional, but their minds were just blown when that vault error. Nobody knew what to do. The gymnasts didn't know what to do, the coaches, the officials, the announcers. It is like nothing you have ever seen in the Olympics before. So if you didn't see it at the time, if you weren't around, you have to watch it because I think it is probably, it's certainly in the top 5 of the greatest Olympic controversies in all of Olympic history.
I cannot imagine being in that room and then dealing with the aftermath of all of that. Is there more?
That is it.
Oh, okay. Phew.
Take a deep breath. No, that's
and,
enough.
and they're very lucky that nobody got seriously injured off of that because all the stuff they're doing is so dangerous. Even at that time, it's always dangerous when you're doing flips and twists in the air. So for nobody to have a life-changing or life-ending injury off of that is pretty incredible. Not in a good way, but it's incredible.
And I do want to mention Alana Slater again, who the Australian gymnast, who really is the hero of this story. This is a 16-year-old kid. Australia does not, at the time, and even now, have much of an international standing in women's gymnastics. And she just said, this doesn't look right. And trusted herself, and her coaches trusted her to, can you imagine being the 16-year-old kid in the greatest gymnastic stage and going to the officials and being like, hey, something's wrong here.
But good for her for speaking out.
And what I want to do in the newsletter this week is what happened to her and what happened to Australian gymnastics. So I didn't get to do it before the show, but I'll do it in the newsletter. Where is Alana Slater, hero, today?
And you can get our newsletter by signing up at flamealivepod.com and sign up. There's a little sign up thing at the bottom of the page. We're on Substack. Our newsletter is on Substack, so you can get it there. It is absolutely free. So signing up is a lot of fun. So
It is. You get to type in your email. You get to tell me your name. You get our little welcome email that I wrote for you.
Producer Ben just gave me some jazz hands. He happens to be in the room today. No, but it is a free. I know that Substacks are sometimes paid subscriptions. Ours is a completely free one, so you can find us on Substack. You can find us at flamealivepod.com, and be sure to sign up. That comes out once a week and then daily during the games. Give some love to some sources because I know you had to do a lot of research for this.
Well, first of all, I watched so many YouTube videos. The amount of hair glitter at the Sydney 2000 Olympics is worth the watch. But in addition, ESPN, BBC, FIG, Elle Magazine, Gymnastics History, USA Gymnastics, Blind Landing Podcast. If you really want to get into it, please tune into that, The Guardian, and Olympics.com.
All right, excellent. Well, it has been another rousing look back at the Sydney 2000 Games. What just there's no amount of size that I have for that. Not in a good way. I mean, we remember Sydney as such a fantastic Olympics, but this was really a black spot on those games.
Hey, Alexei Nemov.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Not lazy, Alexei Nemov. All right. That will do it for this episode. Let us know your favorite moments from Sydney 2000.
And we do love hearing from you. You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. Our voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. And as Jill mentioned, you can find our newsletter on Substack and sign up for that at flamealivepod.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Next week, Book Club Claire will return for our first. Next week, Book Club Claire will return for our first book club selection of 2025, which is Beyond Expectations by Shuk Lastani, Sydney Collier. She's a para-equestrian. It's the memoir of her life through the Rio 2016 Paralympics and all of the all of the things that she overcame to get to those games, which is pretty incredible. It is always great to chat with Claire, so you will not want to miss this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, keep the flame alive.